Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the policy meeting. We are ready to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with approval of the agenda.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry.
Okay, that will bring us to approval of the open session minutes.
I move that we approve the open session minutes.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Policies for second review. We'll begin with policy 4-4, and I suggest we do these all to get all four of these together. So, policy 4-4, investigations by school personnel.
Okay, good morning. This policy went before the board at the last meeting in October, and I've received no recommended changes by any stakeholder groups. And we would request that this go for approval on November 5th.
Okay. Does everyone good with that? Any questions or comments, and we'll move on.
No.
Okay, we'll move to policy 5-9, student assessment.
This also went before the board at the October meeting, and I've received no comments from stakeholder groups, and we would ask that this go for approval at the November meeting.
Okay. Policy 5-13, Title I, parent and family engagement.
Same situation. It went before the board in October, and I've received no comments from stakeholder groups, and we would ask that it be approved in November.
Very good. Last one, 5-23, school calendar.
Same situation. This went before the board in October. No comments from stakeholder groups, and we would ask that this go to the board for approval in November.
Okay, if everyone's good with that, I will accept the motion to send these four policies, 4-4, 5-9, 5-13, and 5-23 to the November board meeting for second review.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks. Policies for first review. We'll begin with policy 3-6, staff student relations.
Yes, this policy is not part of our first review, but what we were or part of our regular review, what we were finding is that there was nothing that addressed communications with teachers through a video conferencing platform. And so on page 2 of 4, we've proposed adding some language that allows teachers to have one-on-one conferences through a platform that's been approved by the district for instructional use. And that will allow us to kind of continue the practice that's been happening necessarily due to the situation we're in. This was last reviewed.
Right.
Yeah, unfortunately, It was revised in December of 19, but that was pre-COVID. So we would ask that this go to the board for first review at the November meeting.
Do you want to?
Okay, if there are no questions about the language, we can move to policy 5-10, school improvement plan.
Okay, 5-10 is part of the regular review. And so I went through and looked at some other districts' plans and the statute and have made some revisions consistent with the statute. Some of that, you can see a lot of the red that's on the bottom of page 1 and going to page 2. Some of it was already in the paragraphs that are below that, and I just bulleted them out so it was easier to read. And so this, again, is part of our regular review, and we would ask that this go to the board for first review in November.
I like that you,
Okay.
I like that you bulleted them out. I have a question. In the second paragraph, the school improvement team in red, the school improvement team is encouraged to involve and seek assistance from central office personnel. What does that mean?
Part of that is we develop a format for them to use and a process, and then it's also to go through the review process. It's reviewed by the academics division, and I don't know if Dr. Breedlove has any other.
No? Okay.
That's kind of the extent of it.
Then the next one is the school improvement team, especially at the middle and high schools, also is encouraged to seek input from students. So why don't we have students on this school improvement team?
The school improvement team is defined by statute.
Can you have additional people?
They could add additional people.
Because how would they get, would that be surveys? I mean, I've never seen anything, I shouldn't say that. Just myself, I've never seen anything from site-based going out to students. But I think that would be awesome, especially in the middle and high schools, to have students on the site-based teams. That would be awesome.
And we can certainly talk to the principals about.
That would be good. Ask them what they think. That would be great, though, because otherwise they're going to have to do surveys and stuff, and the kids and the students don't always respond to that.
And it may be just regular input or feedback they've gotten throughout the entire year about the culture of the building or instructional strategies being used, whatever that might be, that they can take data already collected to incorporate in their planning. I'm not sure, but we can. I also, Michelle, don't see any reason why if, at least in your upper grades.
As well. But I know some of our elementaries have student councils, but I'm not sure all of them do. So, okay. I think that there should be some way to give student feedback on site-based, right? But I think that you should talk to the principals and figures out how at each level how they want to handle that.
Yeah, I think between now and the second review, we can get feedback from principals on that piece and ask how they'd like to word that. That'd
be great.
And this also, the language does not exclude elementary schools. It just says especially.
Right. Okay. That was my only questions or comments.
Okay, very good. We will move to student fees, proposed new policy.
This policy is driven in part, apparently we have a survey that our form we used to complete and send to the state superintendent. The statute has changed and now requires us to put a list of all fees on our website, and the timeline is established by statute and it's included in here. And this took some things that we already had in place and incorporated that new requirement. We had some concerns that we didn't know how this data was being gathered. And so this requires us to facilitate a process and ensures that we follow the statutory requirement. And so that's why we've drafted this new policy, and that we would request go for review at the November meeting as well.
Is this straight from the statute?
There are parts of it that are from the new statute. If you look at especially the end of paragraph 2.
Okay.
And then there are other pieces that's from the new language. And then there's some things in the first paragraph that talks about the no fees being charged except for elective courses, et cetera, that is authorized by other statutes.
Okay. To me, the thing that stuck out in this is the school yearbook. I don't get how that's something that people can buy or not buy. It's optional, where graduation and supplies for elective classes, it seems like the school yearbook doesn't really fit in here, but I will defer to Michelle.
I think that was part of something we had previously.
Okay.
And I think it was because we were trying to put, at the time when the district had talked about it previously, was because we had some schools that had exorbitant fees for yearbooks and some that there was just to get some more consistency and ensure that we had yearbooks that students could afford should they want to buy them.
And we do that now.
We do.
Okay. Thank you. I have no other questions on this.
Okay, then we will send this to the full board for first review.
The next one that we have is online instruction. That's a proposed new policy as well. We just didn't have anything that addressed, especially the remote learning piece. And so it made sense to develop policy to try and ensure that we continue to follow policy. And there was the understanding that remote learning and online instruction still was consistent with in face-to-face instruction.
Did you and Brad have to create this, or did the state offer any guidelines to help you put it together?
This was one that I got from the School Boards Association, and I provided it to Dr. Breedlove for his review and consideration.
Gotcha. Okay, are there any questions?
Yeah, I'm good with this. I talked to Michelle yesterday about, I think we need to update our attendance policy or put it in here with online instruction, because there's been some differences between schools on how they give attendance for online learning. And I think we need to make that consistent across the schools. And I know that the state came out, I don't know if it was the state board or DPI or who it was that came out with it back in July, maybe July, August, June, somewhere there, that teachers should be giving students attendance credit if they either come to the live lesson or they do the classwork that's required. And it's an and or. And I know that there's teachers in the district that are giving participation grades for live instruction. And I just don't think that that's what we should be doing given the attendance policies. But so for next time, I'd like to see something in here about attendance so that it's consistent and parents can look at that and talk to their principals or teachers based on that.
Absolutely. We'll work on that. And
Yes.
I spoke with Dr. Breedlove. He provided me some guidance yesterday
Okay.
that he's working on for elementary schools, and we'll work on that and add that language.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
So along the same lines as attendance, should we put something in there? Because I have a very strong opinion about students receiving zeros. Should we consider any kind of framework? Maybe Dr. Houlihan can jump in here and help, because we've had this discussion before during the COVID outbreak. Some teachers, put in zeros as placeholders. Sometimes kids are getting zeros without being given enough time. After the due date. But is that something the board would like to see in this guideline, or no?
I understand where you're coming from. I'd like to see consistency across the schools.
Because some teachers do it, some teachers don't, and,
Right.
and it's not consistent with kids failing or not failing.
I agree with you that we need to have consistent policies on this. Okay, sorry, Drew.
Now, I was just say one idea that I have is that for consideration is when we come back to this next month, we could work on some administrative guidelines as a governing framework for online learning or virtual that reflects not only attendance, but grading practices and those, formal and informal feedback and those kinds of things as a way to give guidance to principals and teachers for that consistency, if that would help.
That would help.
Yeah,
I definitely think we need to put, I think attendance is important. I think grading guidelines is important. And I don't think we should leave it up to individual schools or teachers that, dramatically affect our students forever.
I agree. I think that consistency is huge with me too. If one school is doing it, but another school's not doing it, it doesn't seem to be equitable across our high schools or middle schools or whoever it is.
And I'm not really sure how I feel about using zeros as placeholders when there is an option in Power School that that it hasn't been, turned in or hasn't been received, as opposed to entering a 0, which can drop, an A to a C. I mean, you can drop, two or three letter grades with 1 or 2 zeros, and next thing you know, children are having anxiety and depression and thoughts of suicide because they're failing a class they've never failed before. So I definitely think we need to have some administrative guidelines on zeros as placeholders, absolutely not being allowed ever if there's an option in Power School that the assignment has not been received or submitted.
We'll be happy to work on those for the next meeting. No problem.
And what I can do for the policy is add a sentence that says the superintendent will develop administrative guidelines to implement this policy, including addressing attendance and grading practices. And then we will have the administrative guidelines for the next meeting, and that allows the policy not to change between the two meetings.
That'd be great.
Yes, thank you. Candace, do you have anything that you've heard from the community on your end? Okay. Okay,
Microphone.
very good. I know attendance and grades is a huge issue in our county, and I know teachers are struggling, but our students are struggling too. So I think we need this to help everyone. Okay. Let me back out of that document. Bear with me. Okay. So that is everything for
No, didn't
first review.
oh, first.
And I guess I'll accept the motion to send this to the board for first review.
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, and that does bring us to the administration guideline for crowd or source funding.
Yes, this proposed change, the need for this arose recently when we were offered we have a company that's looking to offer us a district-wide grant for teachers, and they use a different platform other than Living Tree for that. So the recommendation would be that in limited circumstances, the superintendent could approve the use of a different platform as necessary to allow for us to receive grants that are appropriate and necessary to support the district.
Okay.
One of my questions was, so we got a lot of flack last year when we went to Living Tree. So I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to make changes on a school by school basis, but this is more of a district level issue with respect to grants. So I'm good with it.
Okay. If there are no other comments or questions, we will send the items for second review and first review to the November board meeting, and I'll let Michelle work with Donna to put that on the agenda. And if there are no comments or questions from this meeting, our next board meeting will be November 18th at 9:00 here at the PDC. And with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.